An addictive new season of You has arrived on Netflix as serial stalker Joe heads to LA in search of a fresh start and perhaps a true love story. Yippee-ki-yay movie lovers, I'm Jan, and in this video I'm discussing the ending of season 2 of You, revealing all the clues that predicted the big twist in the finale and explaining what that final shot really means for season 3. We will of course be talking spoilers, so take care if you're not all caught up. The final episode of season 2, appropriately titled Love Actually, explains the twist that Love is as dark and warped as Joe, and also a serial killer like him.
We're soulmates, Joe.
At this point, Love has just murdered Candace in cold blood, something foreshadowed right from the very first episode, when Joe arrives in LA and sees the body of a redhead girl lying in a pool of blood. That was just an actress filming a scene, but the placement of the heart-shaped sunglasses and the black leather jacket were the first sign that Candace wouldn't make it out of LA alive. And as Love reveals how and why she did what she did, the parallels between her and Joe become even more striking. Love killed Delilah and Candace because they were both obstacles in the way of her forming a family with Joe, similar to how Joe killed Benji and Peach in season 1 when he saw them as being in the way of his relationship with Beck. Right from the moment they met, Love latched onto Joe as a means to fulfill her fantasy of having a happy family.
I knew right away, in my gut, I recognized something in you. A little darkness that made you less storybook, more real. I started to fantasize again.
In the first episode, it's Love who makes a move on Joe, scuppering his plan to accidentally bump into her. And like Joe, Love is able to charm those around her, something Joe immediately picks up on.
Oh, you have a way with people. They just like you.
Again, the same as Joe, Love is perceptive, and she immediately recognizes the darkness in him and compares it to herself.
Yeah, I thought about getting you something happy, but let's face it, what you're more interested in is something smart and complex, a little dark. That's what makes you feel at home.
How do you know that?
Well, 'cause me too.
After Candace reveals the truth about Joe's real identity to the Quinns, Love begins to investigate him more thoroughly, but his dark past doesn't deter her one bit. She steals the keys to his creepy lockup where she finds his cage and figures out the truth about Beck and Joe's relationship.
I devoured your dead ex's book front to back. All the articles, all the think pieces, reading between the lines. And I realized Guinevere Beck was unspecial and mediocre.
And it's very similar to how Joe felt about Beck's original boyfriend, Benji.
I do understand something about you now, Beck. You somehow think this guy is all you deserve.
Love even seems to admire Joe's brutal actions, seeing them as a mirror of her own violent past.
You did some terrible things, but that's what sensitive people do when they're trapped in a bad relationship.
By the way, Love's affinity for knives and murder was signalled early on in the season, when we see her butchering a rack of ribs in a scene that's intercut with shots of Joe chopping up Jasper's dead body. And Love's preference for slashing her victims in the throat was also hinted at when she fake attacks Joe in the neck with a toy wolf during her family's wellness weekend. So, Love may be what Joe originally considered his soulmate, but he actually seems disappointed in the love he found in her by the end of the season, and he ponders this at Lucy and Sunrise's wedding.
All I've ever wanted is to love and be loved by someone real and true.
Me, too. Is that what we are? Soulmates? Is this what real love is? Knowing and accepting anything.
I think his state of unease stems from his twisted beliefs about romantic love, mixed with his confused feelings over whether he's really a good or bad person. On the one hand, Joe still harbours delusions of himself as a nice guy and saviour.
The hero races to the cage. He raises the door and steps inside, eager to set Delilah free and begin the rest of his life.
And in the first episode, he even claims he's a changed man.
I don't fantasize to some impossible version of a woman I barely know.
However, we quickly see he's repeating similar patterns to what he did with Beck, and by the time of the finale, Love herself accuses Joe of glossing over the truth with his own warped version of reality.
Because while I was seeing you, really seeing you, you were busy gazing at a goddamn fantasy. A perfectly imperfect girl. You saw what you wanted to see.
In season 2, Joe keeps making the point that he's trying to change, especially after a vision of Beck confronts him over her murder in the second episode. Unlike Benji, who he caged then killed in season 1, he lets his first captive Will go free, and the 2 murders he does commit don't seem to be premeditated. The first is in self-defense when Jasper attacks him, and Henderson was pushed down the stairs as he tried to escape, as Joe's original plan was to have Henderson confess his crimes on camera. But we have to remember that much of what we see in You is presented through Joe's point of view, and that he is an unreliable narrator who spends a good deal of his time rationalising his own often creepy and violent behaviour. Joe may have saved Ellie from Henderson, but after he traps the sleazy celebrity, he's forced to consider how much difference there really is between Henderson and himself. Joe believes his actions are noble, but Henderson quickly dismantles that illusion.
You feel like you're a piece of shit, so you're trying to be a hero. Ruining my life is not going to save you from your demons. We're the same.
No. I'm nothing like you.
We know, of course, that Joe has manipulated, drugged, knocked out, and trapped people to fulfill his own desires, and he's even killed them. Henderson has done similar minus the killing, except he's targeted underage girls. So who's worse? It's a difficult and unsettling question that Joe is definitely not willing to address.
We're nothing alike. He's trying to win with words and ideas that add up to nothing. He is bad. Someone needs to stop him, and he knows it.
In a way, Henderson and Love are 2 sides of the same coin for Joe, as they both force him to look at himself and reflect on his own actions, and he feels threatened and absolutely terrified by that.
No, this isn't me. This isn't me anymore. I didn't want to do that. I didn't do that.
As co-creator Sera has said, part of what they're exploring in the show is the ultimate question of how self-aware Joe can get, and even the showrunners have said that they don't really know the ultimate answer to that yet. Joe's inability to properly confront and deal with his past crimes continues through the season. In the 6th episode, he plans to go to Candace's Airbnb to abduct her and presumably kill her once and for all. And in the 8th episode, when 40 pretends to be Beck to reenact her murder, Joe begins to hear Beck's voice accusing him and he can't handle it.
You're not special. You're broken.
I could never love you. You are the bad thing. You are the thing that you should have killed.
So he begins to strangle 40 for real, just as he did with Beck. Then later when 40 asks Joe,
"How do you think Dr. Nicky hid his sociopathy for so long?"
Joe justifies the actions of Beck's killer, that's himself of course, with yet more self-delusions.
Why does he have to be a sociopath? Maybe he's a man who would do anything for love.
Later on, a vision of Joe's mother tells him,
People like us don't change.
I've changed.
Then why are you already thinking of ways to get rid of 40?
Like Lady Macbeth, Joe sees his own culpability and complicity in the deaths of those around him in a vision of his own bloodied hands. And when Joe discovers that 40 has actually cracked a code hidden in Beck's autobiography, that it was her ex-boyfriend who killed her and not Dr. Nicky, he grabs a piece of glass and goes to kill 40. He doesn't follow through, but that's only because he hears about 40's childhood trauma with the family's murdered au pair. And after Joe thinks that he's killed Delilah himself, he begins to believe that he deserves to be punished.
I'm done with excuses. I'm done blaming everyone else for the things I've done. It's time I take responsibility that a cage is where I belong.
This idea fits in with the literary reference to Dostoevsky's novel Crime and Punishment, which appeared in both the first and last episodes of season 2.
In Crime and Punishment, the hero willingly walks into exile. He is killed, but he's also found love. And if he repents, he can be redeemed. He and the woman he loves can be saved.
Dr. Nicky echoes a similar idea about deserving punishment when 40 goes to see him in prison, with evidence that could prove the therapist didn't kill Beck. Dr. Nicky refuses to cooperate even though he knows that he's innocent of that crime, because he believes he should be punished nonetheless for his other sins.
I didn't kill Beck, but I'm guilty. I'm guilty of using her. She's not the first. I'm a bad person. I'm exactly where I deserve to be.
However, Joe seems willing to switch how he feels about whether he deserves to be punished. Although he says he's now trapped in a cage, forced to live with a woman he no longer loves, which you could see as a sort of fitting punishment, in the very final scene we see him quickly revert to his old tricks.
I had no idea that the cage I was building all this time was a trap for me. But that's not how destiny works, is it? This is just the beginning, because this is where I had to be. Exactly where I had to be to meet you.
As we can see, Joe has started on a new delusional path, twisting reality and pretending to himself that falling for Candace, Beck and Love were just errors in a greater scheme, blips along the path of destiny to meet a literate and literal girl next door. Now, this scene is clearly teasing a setup for season 3, and just before I get to that and explain why we're very likely to get at least 2 more seasons before Joe perhaps gets the justice he deserves, I want to let you know that thanks to this video's sponsor, NordVPN, all our viewers can get a very special holiday deal of 81% off Nord's fantastic virtual private network, as well as 4 bonus months for free, plus free access to the Nord Password Manager. Just visit nordvpn.com/flicks or tap the link in the video description. So, to understand what will happen next season, we need to remember that by the very end, Joe isn't in love with Love anymore. After she revealed her true nature to Joe, his romantic illusion was shattered, and when Love refused to let Joe out of the cage, he said to himself that he would do what Beck did to him and pretend to love her.
What did Beck do in this situation?
I love you.
Right. She pretended. You're asking me to see you, to love you. I don't know what to feel, love, but I know what to do.
In fact, Joe almost kills Love until she reveals that she's pregnant and carrying his baby. This is the only thing that stopped him from murdering her, as protecting children is something that Joe responds to in particular. He went out of his way in both seasons, even putting himself in danger to protect both Paco and Ellie, and even tried to help Delilah, perhaps because of what Henderson did to her as a child. This all probably relates back to how Joe feels about his own troubled childhood, and so he sympathises with children and wants to help them. At the end of the season, this is how Joe sees himself.
I'm ready to meet my daughter. I'm ready to be the good father I never had, to make the family I always dreamed of, the one she deserves.
However, whether Joe really sticks around is immediately undermined at the very end as we see him beginning to stalk the woman next door. We know he believes he's trapped himself in a cage with Love, so it's quite likely he will try and escape, perhaps with his daughter even, and run to somewhere far from LA. For anyone who isn't already aware, this TV show is based on the books You and Hidden Bodies by author Caroline Kepnes, and she already has 2 new books planned in the series. According to EW, the 3rd book will see Joe move to the Pacific Northwest with a plan to become a family man in his own unique way. Now, the TV show has deviated from the books in various significant ways, but if Joe needs to leave LA in a hurry, say because Love catches him creeping on their neighbour and tries to kill him, then fleeing to another state feels like something he would do, given that's what he did when Candace returned to confront him in New York. He might also run off with his daughter to get away from the clutches of the powerful and corrupt Quinn family. And remember that he's still in contact with Will in Manila, who could help him get set up with new identities and a new location. And given the popularity of the show, I can't see the showrunners wanting to end Joe's story in the 3rd season either, especially as there is at least a 4th book planned in the series, which means that I expect it's unlikely Joe will see justice for any of his crimes until season 4, at which point perhaps Candace's prediction will eventually come true.
Murder has a way of following you, and you're not getting away with it.
On the subject of being stalked online, if you want to secure yourself from hackers, malicious websites, and even your own internet service providers selling your online browsing history to advertisers, then a VPN is essential. A VPN creates a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and a VPN server, stopping your ISP or any other agencies from tracking you online, reading your emails, private messages, or what websites you're visiting. Unlike free VPNs, Nord is super fast with more than 5,000 servers in over 60 countries. And when I put it to the test, I was still able to get blisteringly fast download speeds over my home connection. NordVPN is also great in helping you bypass any blocks on videos or websites which aren't viewable in your country. With NordVPN, you can quickly pick a server in any country and then browse the internet as if you were there. NordVPN even unlocks Netflix shows that may not be available in your home country. The interface is amazingly intuitive, and you can connect up to 6 devices at the same time, so you can keep your mobile devices and laptops safe whenever you're traveling or using insecure public Wi-Fi in a coffee shop, for example. On top of that, NordVPN offers a unique feature called CyberSec, which provides ad blocking and protection against malware. And Nord has a no-log policy, meaning it doesn't record any of your browsing. With our special holiday deal, NordVPN are offering all our viewers up to 81% off new subscriptions, an additional 4 months for free, and access to the Nord Password Manager at no no additional cost. Just visit nordvpn.com/flicks or tap the link in the video description to access the offer. For just the price of a monthly cup of coffee, you can secure your internet browsing from spies and hackers. That's nordvpn.com/flicks for a huge 81% discount and 4 months entirely free. So how do you feel about the ending for Joe and Love in Season 2? And what would you like to see happen in Season 3? Comment with your thoughts below. And if you enjoyed this, I'll be reviewing new seasons of Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Lucifer and Stranger Things as they come out, so make sure you subscribe to get all my new videos. Tap left for my next video, or tap right for another video you're sure to like. Thanks for watching and see you next time, yippee-ki-yay movie lovers!